Today we have a new series where we review the community's gameplay. We will see based on likes and comments if we're gonna continue the series. I hope we do. I was always very hesitant to make this series to begin with, but I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm gonna do my best to blur out the names. It was actually requested in the Discord just out of respect for players so they don't feel like they're being put on blast. So I think I'm just going to continue on with that so then players feel like they have a bit of privacy. It's not going to be perfect, clearly, because you'll see their teammates and stuff, but it's a step in the right direction. The goal is to help educate and for us all to learn together. We all make mistakes. I make a ton, and we were all new once. With the goal of being helpful, if you have any helpful comments for the gameplay we're reviewing today, please comment down below. If you want to enter into the series, please do so with the instructions in the description down below. We have 4 clips for today, leading up with each player before they got eliminated. Let's see what we can do to help. Okay, for the first clip, I just wanted to highlight mostly the inventory management, just as like just general tips. You really don't need this many medkits. So I'm gonna highlight, I have my cursor on screen here. You really only need about 2. So this is 3 inventory slots, and you can also remove the syringes. And I noticed after a moment, you didn't get rid of that. So that's huge, because that can mean 2 extra grenades and maybe a whole extra stack of ammo. And you do have the massive, to be fair, but stock up an even more light. Grenades, batteries, even cells I would take as a priority over medkits and syringes. Just most likely you're not going to be caught out of the zone like that. Also, I noticed specifically that you know how to slide jump and you know how to move. One thing that your team doesn't do very strong in this, and I would say it was your biggest tip, is to occupy space. So when I say occupy space, use your head glitches around these rocks and angles to put pressure on the opponent. That's one of my biggest tips when I was watching your gameplay specifically. That can definitely help you out. Use your angles. I'm going to go in the test range after this and showcase an example in terms of movement. Always slide jump everywhere. Like, you know how to do it, and I see you do it here, but always slide jump everywhere. And when I go into the test range and I give an example that'll really help you out, really take that to heart. Also, make sure your team isn't all peeking the same angle. You're all looking at the same angle right here, and that can be very difficult because if somebody was looking back sniping, well, then all 3 of you would be located there. So you want to play together. But if I pause here, let's say one person was here, one person was on the rock on the left, and one person was peeking on the other left, you have various angles to hold. And you have to be very active in terms of the way you're holding, and I'll showcase that in the test range afterwards. And so some of this I will showcase in the test range. This clip really spoke out to me, and it really made me notice that this could be helpful for a lot of people. Don't also hesitate to take some shots if you see them. Put pressure. That's the whole reason why you're playing Wraith or you're playing such an aggressive squad, is to put that pressure on the opponent. And again, occupy that space. There's a rock here on the right. I'll put my cursor over it, and you'll see that rock there. It can be very, very helpful in terms of finding an angle. We talk about keeping your hitbox as small as possible. You're doing it here, and I'm going to skip ahead and just for a few seconds here, we're going to go 5 seconds, because you start to rotate and you run into an opponent, and you really want to claim space for what's good. You don't want to get gated out, and this is a big tip for everyone. This is pubs, but at the same time, people towards the end zone play very much sweaty. Very, very sweaty. Everybody wants to win, and so you have to occupy that space and don't get gated out because of zone, and make the rotation as difficult for you as possible. You want it to be easy. You want to get to the center zone. You want to fight for what's yours. So we're going to skip ahead just a few notches here. And when I say occupy space, this is really what happened, why you essentially got caught out here. You got to look ahead of time. So one person's on the left and one person's on the right. Right now, you need to be looking for angles to put pressure. You can climb up the rock. Even if it exposes your body just a little bit, it'll definitely benefit you a lot, because it'll help you occupy that space. And be sure whenever you're moving to go from cover to cover very efficiently while slide jumping and using momentum. So they have a ping here. You can climb on this rock here and peek down below. And I'm going to point out why it's so important, because your goal is to get the jump on the opponent, or find and get creative angles to get a jump on an opponent. So what happens here, your aim is actually really good, by the way. And a lot of people, when you're looking in the comment section, you're going to notice whenever you are landing your shots, it is very sharp. And you're on mouse and keyboard, but don't be shy about your aim. You'll only get better by taking angles. So right now it seems like, okay, this is the moment I was talking about, because I already looked at this clip a little bit. You have multiple opponents that are potentially looking at you. I know that you missed your initial shot, but it's perfectly fine. But the next shot that you take, essentially you need to take a different angle. You don't wide peek the same angle twice, and you don't wide swing out. So this is what you saw the Rampart do, is a wide swing. At this point, you're just kind of ego challenged. See, you're recoil control on what you're landing shots here. It's fantastic. This is good. But if you're wide swinging out together, even if the opponent misses some of their shots, you're going to end up hitting both of you. So if you climb up top and you take different angles and you don't peek the same angle twice, it's going to be beneficial because you're trying to throw off the opponent. You don't want to be predictable. And unfortunately here in this circumstance, you were predictable, and it's why your team got eliminated. Let's go in the test range. Let me show you a little bit of how to move back and forth between cover. Now in this example, what I really wanted to highlight and help educate was the portion of your movement. Be sure you're always slide jumping. When you're using an heirloom, it has a specific animation, but if you don't have your heirloom, you'll wait for your fist to appear whenever you can slide jump again. Your goal is to maintain as much speed and velocity as possible when moving around. So when you're going from cover to cover, let's say you had your R301 like you did a second ago and you took a few shots, you move, you can strafe around, and then you get to a different angle to peek. Let's say you were using the rocks that you were using a second ago, and the team was located on this side. Well, let's say you don't have these stairs. Let's say you climbed up on this rock right here and took this angle, shot down below, slide jump to a different angle, wide swung, moved up, and constantly put the pressure on the opponent. And let's say that they decided to take from the low ground to move up instead, and there was stairs here. You would have this angle and you have this jump on them. Your goal is to put as much pressure on an opponent as possible and don't give them any room to breathe. Because remember, if I just stood here, especially with all my teammates, and we just kind of hung this angle and held here, and the zone is pulling specifically on the opposite end, so you see what it looks like. They may have a rock, they may have an angle. Even if you land shots on them and then everyone is just 1v1ing, you have to run towards zone, towards the opponent, which is what we're looking at here. So remember, slide jump, keep your momentum going. If you don't know how to tap strafe, I definitely have a few guys to learn how to tap strafe to kind of keep your movement sharp. But it's very, very important. Even if you're on controller, that movement, even just slide jumping, can be pretty beneficial and to help you maximize everything that you're doing. So let's go on to the next clip. Okay, for the next clip here, I noticed that this was 2 squads remaining, yourself and an opposite squad. And a few things are a bit of a problem here that I wanted to highlight specifically. So if you ever get scanned by a bloodhound, you need to wait until the sonar detected is gone. And I froze the frame specifically to highlight this. Because look how quick until your opponent, so I'm going to go in slow motion here, frame by frame, once they catch out your opponent, because they can see where your teammate is at, right? And this happens within seconds. And it's very important if you ever get scanned by a bloodhound, if they throw out their scan, or Seer if he throws out his scan or ultimate, that you start to take the fight a little bit more patient, because that moment you see right here, look how quick this was. Definitely looked like from a Kraber, but still they knew where to peek and where to do the damage. Now there's 2 things you could have done here, and I'm going to pause it again. I'm going to let it roll. You're doing damage. Now you're doing damage to fences, but you're also burning somebody for armor. Now, I understand laying down suppressive fire, but because nobody is peeking, you don't necessarily have to lay down any fire quite yet. Now, there's 2 things you could have done here. At this point, because your teammate had to heal up, you could rotate and go a little bit further into zone. Let's see where it pulls, just for information's sake. We see that it's actually pulling on the south side here. You essentially could leave, back up, and then hold the south side, because they don't actually have to... They have to leave. Both of you guys actually have to leave. You actually have better position. You don't actually need to push this fight quite yet. So if I look at this, your moment to push from the scan from the bloodhound whenever they threw it out for you was actually going to be earlier. So let's go 5 seconds before. 5 seconds before you were burning, this is your moment to push. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The scan comes out, and unfortunately the push is already too late because the gen is down. The gen was not down earlier because your thermite would have gotten eliminated. So let's go 10 seconds before. This moment right here, what could have been an option is to move up, and while your teammate is popping a Phoenix, you can move in, because right now nobody's watching the hallway because they're getting burned. They actually retreated from that fight. Because they retreated, those seconds mattered for you to actually make a push and make a play. But now that you've made the play here, it's a little too late. So right now you wide swung out without any cover, and they have cover. They can actually back out and move back, and there is a generator up from what you saw from the Watson, meaning that they're going to be able to recoup their health faster than you. So while you did do a good amount of damage, unfortunately, you put yourself at a disadvantage. So the only thing you could have done is say, hey, that hallway's hard to push. Let's drop down, let's reposition. Or the second when you have the thermite and realize they didn't peek, then you can go on out. So there's 2 different avenues, or none of them are necessarily wrong. If we go back, again, let's go back 15 seconds. Well, I guess it's more like 25 seconds, excuse me. Then you realize, okay, this is a window. You either retreat or you push forward, and you get your information from the zone here. This would have been, well, time to back up. There's no reason to fight this. And you see that the gen is there, and you know that pushing a Watson with a gen, if she's got her fences, and even if they have it at an angle there, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. The only thing you could do against a Watson gen is to really just to push it, just to mitigate as much health as possible. so then you can get the health as well, because right now this is just a disadvantage. Nothing wrong about this specific. This is a hard encounter because you're trying to play the aggressor, and always playing the aggressor is a little bit more difficult. So let's go on to the next clip. This next clip that was submitted from a viewer actually was a win, and we'll kind of highlight the win, but briefly, this actually inspired me to make a video of this coming Sunday about the biggest weakness I see from console players, and it has to do all with positioning. I know a lot of console players obsess about improving their aim, but I want to highlight that I believe the biggest thing any console player can do is to focus on their positioning. So even right here, when you pushed out without any regard towards your positioning. So I'm gonna slow it down here. So you have the ultimate and you have information, but you know where they're at. But you still decided to push out right in the open whenever this person could have pulled out their loadout and instantly started frying you. Now the opponent does the same thing. They actually use a jump pad and push in without a lack of information. So this caustic pushes in without any regard to positioning or information that's being presented. It's hard to push in against a seer, and this is more or less a tip for the opponent team. If you're going to push in, you at least need to know where they're located or know that they're all three there. This is a big problem I see from console players. It has less to do about their aim and more to do about when they decide to peek in their positioning. And you're going to see from your gameplay here in a second that you make this similar mistake. So when you push up, remember, I'll highlight in the test range how you need to do it, but you go for an ego play here. When I say ego play, there's a position that you can play this wall, and you have the information. You don't need to necessarily wide swing out, but you push your whole body out to the opponent, and because of that, you're actually going to get shot from the left side as well. So you see it from the left side already that you actually got 2v1'd here. You got your elimination, but the downside is that you got eliminated from the other opponent as well. You were literally being shot by two people at once. You had the information going in because you're seer, but you still got knocked and eliminated. What happens if you got thirded here? Your team right now only has, let's say, about 200 or 300 HP. If you got thirded here, this actually would have resulted in a loss instead of a win for your team. So those are important to highlight. I'm going to post this in the test range. Let's skip ahead to the win, because ultimately, you had good positioning, you took height, and you kept your hitbox small, but you'll notice from your opponent that they make the same mistake that you did, essentially, by running out in the open, by thinking they could get away. Yes, they need to run to zone, but they ultimately just ended up running out in the open. So running out in the open is going to net a loss. There's no way that they could have clutched out from that. But if they ran underneath the building or ran over to cover specifically, it would have actually landed in, you know, surviving a lot longer, which is why I say it's the biggest mistake that I see most console players play. And when I've coached console players, it really has more to do with their positioning. If a console player knows how to position, I promise you they're going to be some of the best players I've seen in the game because of the fact that you're playing on making your hitbox small. So let's highlight in the test range what you can do, especially when you're wide peeking an angle versus making a small peak. Let's highlight that. Just to add on to some tips early, remember as you're moving around, because I see this happen with a lot of console players, be sure to put your weapon away. Make this a habit. Put your weapon away, especially whenever you're trying to rotate out in the open. Let's say there's an opponent here. You're not going to take shots, so you want to be sure to put your weapon away so you gain maximum momentum, and that's pretty much key so you can slide jump. Remember when I said your hands appear? So you slide jump, your hands appear. You can slide jump again. Slide jump, wait for your hands to appear. Slide jump, wait for your hands to appear. Now let's talk about the double peek that we're looking at earlier from the VOD. So specifically, let's say your heartbeat picked up an opponent. We threw down our ultimate, and we saw that there's an opponent behind this rock over here, but they're getting pressured from your teammate above. And let's say there's an opponent located right around this corner. Now the worst thing you can do, which is what we saw, is the wide peek out and say, I'm going for the 1v1. Now the downside about this is that even if you reload, it's going to take you a second to go back around cover. Your opponent may actually decide to shoot you instead because you are wide peeking out in the open. So the best thing you can do is take the angle, take your shots, and then go right back and get the damage discrepancy. Once you have the damage, then go for the elimination, go for the kill, and move right back. So you want to be able to make sure that you get the jump on the opponent and that damage, but if you peek out, let's say the opponent actually was right here and there was one right here peeking, well then you got a 2v1 and there's no way for you to get back. If you take it slow and take your shots and you notice, okay, there's one there, you might actually reposition and say, you know what, this isn't worth it. But if you have your ultimate like you saw earlier, specifically, with Seer, you know exactly where they're going to peek and what they're going to do. So hold that wall, hold that angle. This is a major mistake, and we're going to cover this in Sunday's video that I see most console players make. And this is partly because on PC, you play games like Valorant and CSGO, so it's all about that peeking and holding an angle. Hold the angle on console, and once you get the damage done, then go for the swing and go for the elimination and the cleanup, because you got the damage discrepancy. All right, let's go into the final clip. All right, now we got the next clip to review. So the biggest thing is already an opponent kind of just shoved right into you, which is a good thing because you were able to do a 2v1, which is why I paused the footage here for just a moment. The big thing though is that you did leave your opponent and that there's so much time that you did not heal here. Both you and your opponent did not reset together, and while there was also an armor there that you also did not ping for your teammate. So your opponent went down below, but now you're separate from one another. So if we calculate how much time this is from when you got your first elimination, you have 1 cell still to your name. If we skip ahead, we got 5 seconds, 10, 15, 20. It took 20 seconds before you decided to pop a cell. 20 seconds. A cell doesn't take 20 seconds to pop, even if it's your last one in. So that right there could have been popped, and you could add more of a HP to your pull. Another mistake that was located within this clip is the fact that you did not down the target. You use the cell after you won this encounter. You instantly need to go for the armor swap off this opponent. The reason why? Your teammate is actually blocking the door. You know without a shadow of a doubt that nobody's going to be able to push from the door here. And now even if there was an opponent above, if you got the armor swap in a timely fashion, you don't even have to worry about them coming down the stairs. You will know that they're coming down the stairs. In fact, leaving this individual up for far too long is giving information of where you're located. So there's moments whenever you need to grief, and all this time spent healing was about, let's say here, and you see that they're right outside the building, we're located there. We'll go back 5 seconds, another 5 seconds. This is almost 10 seconds, 10 total seconds. And this is a clip where I really highlight, whether you're on PC, whether you're on console, that time really, really matters. Because you essentially could have gotten eliminated here. You won your 1v1, but you took way too much damage. So if I look back with the Valkyrie here, you took so much damage that you actually almost got eliminated by the Valkyrie, despite doing a lot of damage to her, which is a mistake. So also whenever you stimmed as well earlier, you're definitely losing your HP, which is why it's so important to get those cells out. So hang together with your teammate. Be close. Pop cells, reset together, because just like you saw the Loba, if you push somebody 2v1, they're most likely not going to be able to win that encounter. So at this point, whenever you got the jump on them because they did damage, it only took 115 damage, which you were very close in terms of the amount of damage that you both did to each other, but every second matters. So whenever you get this clutch here, don't rely on RNG and luck, rely on skill and assessing the situation. So you took a little bit too much damage from the fuse nade there, but are doubling back and going back and forth. The fuse makes a mistake by shoving at this point, and they were low HP. If they were full HP and even took their time in terms of healing, you would have lost that encounter. So it's very important while you'll win encounters to assess, even though you won an encounter, what went wrong. Because your opponents are making those mistakes. Don't make what mistakes that your opponents are making. Hang together, be close. And even for your Horizon, if we go back and we look at the time spent, it took them about 7 seconds until they decided to heal. That could have been popped immediately, and they could have had the Phoenix kit out if you were covering for them instead of them throwing their ultimate out. So just little tips to remember to play while playing with your squad, understanding time. If you hesitate even for 5 seconds, that's enough for an opponent to get a battery off. So hopefully you guys found this VOD review session helpful. These are just initial tips when reviewing a VOD. Even if you win an encounter, it doesn't really matter. There's always room for improvement. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested, don't forget to submit your clips down below. Appreciate everybody for watching. I'll see you guys all in the next episode.